Herzlich willkommen zum 21. Medien.NRW Webinar. Normalerweise sitzt Sandra Winterberg hier und begrüßt euch. Die ist aber bereits auf dem Weg nach Singapur zur Gamescom Asia. Deshalb vertrete ich sie heute. Ich bin Lisa Graf-Richter und ich bin Referentin für Kommunikation und PR im Mediennetzwerk und habe heute die Ehre, dieses Webinar mit euch und mit dem lieben Klaus zu machen. Das war nur eine kurze Info vorab auf Deutsch. Wir werden jetzt gleich auf Englisch wechseln, damit wir auch unsere internationalen Gäste erreichen können. So, I'm happy to introduce Klaus Scherwinski, who is our speaker today. And our topic today is storyboarding, career and creativity. And I'm very excited because I have no idea about this topic. And I'm excited about getting a good input and insights to your job, Klaus. Hello, Klaus.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. It's great that if you know less, that's great because we're trying to bring everybody together today. And I'll basically start from zero. So,
what exactly will we be talking about today?
Oh, well, I have like 6 points listed up in my presentation, but I have to start sharing my screen for that. Yeah, we're going to talk about storyboarding and what it is, also a little bit what it's not, and also like how my career developed as a storyboard artist, how I came to make those, help create those AAA video games. And we're also going to talk about story because it's all about storytelling. There's an old adage that says story is king. In media and in communication, and that is definitely true. And back in the day, I always thought it was about drawing and rendering and making something pretty. And that's surely one part of it, but without story, it's all for naught.
Okay, so before we are about to start, one information, this session will be uploaded to YouTube and the chat is also on YouTube, so be a little bit careful what you put in the chat. And now, thank you for your attention, and Klaus, get ready.
So, can we see the screen now? I think we can.
This looks fine.
Very good, very good. Let me just push this to the side a little here, and then we're golden. Okay, yes, we're going to talk about career and creativity today. So I have like 6 points for everyone. First, we're going to talk about career, like definitely about my career, how I started and how I got to do the thing and what it is that I'm doing. But this talks also to inform people about the purpose of storyboarding. What can we do with it? What can we achieve with it? And there's a lot that we can do in game production. And after I gave a similar talk at the developers conference at DEFCON, in Cologne recently, people told me, like, I always thought it was just like about doing sketches and then do cinematic. But no, there's more to it. It intersects with a larger part of game production. And that, to me, is very interesting. And it's one of the joys of my job, apart from drawing cool stuff. We're going to talk about story and the importance of story. I mentioned that before. We're going to talk about storyboarding in terms of cinematics, and because cinematics are a little bit a different beast than storyboarding for just animation or for film. There's going to be a Q&A. That's going to be great. So while I'm talking, while I'm showing you stuff, please feel free to ask questions, put them in the chat. Lisa is going to be so nice to moderate it and help us with gathering the questions together. And if we're really lucky, if we have enough time, if I'm not too slow, if I don't talk too much, which often happens, there might be the time at the end for a tiny, tiny demo. I could sketch something that I make up just to show you the process and guide you through the creative endeavor that we have when we're doing storyboarding. Or maybe you can come up with a one-sentence script of a scene, of a shot. And yeah, if you have an idea, be prepared for it. In an hour or so, I can ask you about it. And maybe I can draw something that you came up with or that Lisa came up with. Yeah, I think we can dive right in. And also, Lisa, feel free to interrupt me every once in a while. If there's an important question that is a part of what I'm talking about in that moment, it might really be good to just throw that in. And I'm happy to deviate for a second if necessary.
Yeah,
so yeah,
do so.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, let's talk about career a little. So this is my name. I was born in Germany in the last century, long ago, and I live in Amsterdam now, beautiful Amsterdam. You can add me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram if you like. My website is at the bottom too. It's storyboardklaus.com or klausscherwinski.de, but nobody knows how to write Klaus Scherwinski. So I also made this other website that just links you to my real my real website. Please feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I mean that. A lot of times people hear that and then they go like, I don't know if I should connect with that person. But if you have anything to do, if you have any interest in visual storytelling, in storyboarding, in film and animation, all that, then we are of the same kind. We're the same people. So please add me on LinkedIn so we can be connected there. That would be really awesome if you did that. You can also connect with other people in the chat today, which is a great opportunity, I think, especially in Northern Rhine-Westphalia, but also beyond that, to connect with like-minded people or people who have an interest. So if you feel daring enough, put maybe your LinkedIn connection out there or your social media, something like that. It's going to show up on YouTube indeed. But I'm doing this so you can do it too if you want and are able to connect with other people. Maybe you also want to put what your job is into the chat, because that would be interesting really for me to see, like, do we have other storyboard artists who are in the chat today? Okay, for you, that's going to be lame. You're going to be bored because I'm just talking about stuff you already know. Or is it producers? Is it animators that we have? Is it people who are just interested in games but actually do something different with media, with film, and who have big plans maybe for something similar that might need storyboarding? So it would be interesting to see what you people are doing. But yeah, please, let's make this a session to connect, and let's make this a session to talk about and interact when it comes to storyboarding. All right, let's go on. Yeah, you might have known or heard already that I worked on Horizon Forbidden West, the computer game by Guerrilla Games, just came out in February of this year, and yeah, that was a lot of fun working on that one. On the right, you can see my storyboard. On the left, you can see what the amazing team at Guerrilla has made from it. This was Hitman, IO Interactive, Danish company that produced this game, and I worked on it as a storyboard artist. It was really cool. You can find it on my website as well. There's a trailer in there. This was Rise, Son of Rome, one of my big breakthroughs at Crytek when I was a employee there. Working with storyboarding, this one was really one of the highlights of my career. But as I mentioned elsewhere, like I have the best job in the world, so my career is full of highlights, and I'm going to tell you all about it, unfortunately, now. Yeah, I also worked on trailers, not only on full games like Civilization 6, Neverwinter Nights, Ravenloft, Harry Potter Hogwarts Mystery. So it's trailer work too that I do for different smaller studios. It's simpler to do in a way than doing cinematics. But we can talk more about how cinematics are produced and how those differences work in the Q&A section, if you like. Oh yeah. I worked on Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, but this game has just been pushed back, so it's going to come out soon-ish, I guess. That was my last project, but I can't show you anything yet about that. We'll see. But let's start really at the beginning, or like really early in my life, and talk about career stuff. Those were all stuff that I've recently done, but this is a photo from the 80s, from the early 80s. I just had a new Lego Knights Castle, and I was a very happy little boy, as you can see. And yeah, Lego was one of the main idea generation machines and the main tools, the main medium for me to create stories. So for one Christmas, I got the Galaxy Explorer from Lego, and I knew how amazed I was of this giant ship. I mean, the ship was giant to my tiny hands. Today it would be a bit smaller, but there are so many ideas in there and characters, and you can make up your own stories with it. And that was something that always drove me, making up those own stories, building these little scenarios, building these little dioramas that really interested me. So, but we'll talk more about the difference between storytelling in different ways in a minute. So let's wait until we get there. Maybe some of you share this history with me and go like, oh yeah, Lego, always loved it as a kid. It's been so cool. And yeah, it can drive us to great places, these little impulses we get as kids. And yeah, you can see it in the background too. I got a Horizon Forbidden West tall neck made from Lego in the background there, nicely stashed, because I love the game, but I also love Lego. So that was really a great thing, and had to get it. I also, excuse me, I also watched as a kid a lot of cartoons. And I mean, as many cartoons we had back then, because at first I didn't have cable television, so I could only watch Captain Future, which was really cool, if somebody remembers it. And I could watch Heidi, which is kind of less cool for a boy that wants adventure and laser race and all that stuff. And then there was Dr. Snuggles and Maya the Bee, Die Biene Maya in Germany. And that was basically all it had, right? But then age 15, I got cable, and I got to see He-Man and yeah, the Hero Turtles and She-Ra and Dragon Ball Z and all the cool stuff that came out, and that really inspired me to draw myself. And there was one series called Saber Rider and the Star Sheriffs that I really loved as a kid. It was called Seiyushi Bismarcku in Japan, because it was a Japanese animated series, and it was translated into English. It was redubbed. The name was changed, and the main character of the story actually was changed. And they did a lot of interesting changes in edit, but I never knew this up until a few years ago. I was a big fan of that show, but there was no merchandise for it. There was no toys. There was nothing for it. So the only chance I had to engage with this stuff I was a fan of was drawing myself, telling my own little stories with those characters. So I took stills from the TV that I had recorded on videocassette. Yes, videocassette. It was that long ago. And I just drew the suits and all that stuff from it. And then I drew my own comics, showed them around in the classroom, and everybody loved it because there were no comics for Saber and the Star Sheriffs. So yeah, that was really a breakthrough moment for me, that I was able to see that I could entertain people by drawing something. And the better I could draw, the more nuanced and more subtle I could tell stories, and the more I could entertain people. And that was the defining drive for me as an artist. It's as a storyteller. It's not actually as a person that renders stuff, light and shadow. I'm just telling stories with pictures. This was also another breakthrough moment for me. This was like 1999. I just finished my first comic. It was called Kopek, like a Russian superhero type story taking place in America. I knew nothing of America. I just knew other comics. So I took, in a way, like inspiration from different comic books and just put that together. Had a good idea. And because I always went to comic book stores, there was one that actually had a person in there who said, like, you know what, Klaus, you draw great stuff. I'll connect you with people, and you can draw something and color it and make your own comic book, and I'm going to publish it, or that person is going to publish it. And that then actually happened. I published my own comic book series starting in 1999. It was a 3-issue miniseries. And here you can see me being in my early 20s and yeah, selling my comic books to people back then. I also worked from home still. So I lived with my parents even in my mid-20s, because I was like still at university. I studied English, Spanish, and economics. I didn't study art. They didn't take me. They were not interested. They actually pushed away people who were more talented than I was. Yeah, I was one of the people they pushed away too. So I just did art on my own, on myself. And you can see me there with an old, huge, really heavy monitor in the background, probably 17-inch, 19-inch max. That was enormously large back then and very expensive. You can see the improvised light table I'm drawing on. And on the left, you can see pen and paper role-playing game illustration I did back in the day. That was real ink on paper and then scanned into a really cheap scanner and then sent out to America, and then the check came in the mail. It was exciting times, and it enabled me to stop studying at university and actually move out away from my parents and yeah, build a career on my own. And that was in 2003. So next year I will have my 20-year anniversary as a professional freelancer and have to do a party or something like that, because surviving in art, surviving in entertainment for 20 years, it's again one of those highlights. It's again one of those career goals that I have, that people have. Somebody told me when I was drawing these my own story, basically, a friend told me, like, you have to go to San Diego, you have to go to America, because that's where the real comic books are being made, and your stuff is good enough. I have a story for you. And my friend Joseph brought me there to San Diego, and that was back in the day when you could still do handshake deals over the counter with people. So we went to Heavy Metal magazine. I don't know if some of you know that. Sound off in the chat if you know Heavy Metal magazine or have seen the Heavy Metal movie back in the day, if you're that old and knowledgeable about that stuff. Yeah, so I got published in Heavy Metal magazine, which was my first American comic book publication, big breakthrough moment. You can see me, I don't know if you can see my my mouse cursor here, but this is me in the background there on the left. So yeah, back then, manual cameras, you never knew how the picture turned out, nothing digital about it, except we had internet and could send out stuff via the internet, but only in small packages, right? I mean, back then it was big packages. And like 3 megabytes was a lot of data, a lot of information back in 99, 2000, 2001. So this was 2001, my first time in the States. And yeah, we went to Heavy Metal magazine, talked to Kevin Eastman. You might remember him. He invented the Hero Turtles together with, Eastman at Lard, the Hero Turtles. And he was running Heavy Metal magazine back then. He would just show him the artwork. You had it printed out. He brought it over. He looked through it. You made a handshake deal. And 6 months later, you were in the book. That was pretty cool and pretty exciting. One of the main takeaways from all the story I'm telling right now is, like, you have to be on the move. You have to show yourself. You have to get yourself out there. So if you're a budding artist that wants to get into games, that wants to have a career in entertainment, please show your stuff. Enable other people to become a fan of your artwork. Put it out there on all those platforms, on ArtStation, on Instagram, wherever, and be able for people, enable people to discover you. That's really important. Back in the day, I had to travel 5,000 miles to do this, and now you can do that from the comfort of your own home. It's kind of cool today what's possible. I also got this way, via San Diego Comic-Con, into drawing comic books for G.I. Joe and for Transformers, well-known brands internationally. And that was right at the time when the first Transformers movie came out by Michael Bay. I then graduated in a way to painting covers, like from drawing to painting. Painting is a different process. It's a different beast. And I did role-playing game illustrations for Shadowrun, Battletech, for Warhammer 40K. I did novel covers. Yeah, all this sort of stuff. But I wanted to talk with you about purpose, except there's a question right now that Lisa has already recorded, some that really pertains to
No question, but we have a storyboard artist with us, and a narrative designer who's very interested in the story aspects of storyboarding. And we have someone who's specialized in texturing and shading, and a creative director. So a lot of cool people.
Absolutely, and hopefully, I'm hoping we have a lot of students as well, because there's always something new to learn, and it's and I can only tell and can only say to every artist out there that it's so important to connect with all parts of this industry, the entire production process, from creative direction, from writing, from narrative. Knowing about environments, knowing about character art and how everything works. The more you know about it, the better you are in doing your job. There was this famous Chinese or Japanese general that said, "Be acquainted with every art." Right. So, as a creative, it's better if you know more. So I wanted to talk about purpose for a second of storyboarding, and the most known purpose is just taking a script and creating a picture from it. Like I always say that storyboards are the first contact with the script, basically the first time the script is visualized. The idea here is, though, that storyboarding can be much more. It's not just a thing between narrative and me as an artist. There's an interaction going on, and it goes far beyond what I'm doing, because what I'm doing here is not the end product, as opposed, for example, in a comic book. So you will also notice that if you started reading this script, there's a lot of information in the script, and the picture is faster, though. And that's what they mean when they say a picture is 1,000 words. And that's exactly that. So you can see the picture and immediately grasp the situation of what it is and the atmosphere and what is happening. It's very simple. It's a great technique. And writing words is just too cumbersome. So a different process here, in a way. My claim is that storyboarding is a tool that helps the entire team tell the story of the game. Because games have a story. Games are not just mechanically pushing some buttons and then something gives you 1,000 points. That's no motivation to play a game, right? And when people tell me, sometimes pitch game ideas to me and tell me about the mechanic they have and the world building they have in the back of their mind or in the game, I'm telling like, but what's the story? Why should I care that you have this science fiction civilization that's on the brink of extinction and there's another planet that produces a giant robot weapon or something? Interesting, but it's not motivating me to play the game. I need a personal connection on that. And that is where story comes in. And that's where the entire team is connected to this. So I have some examples of you today that illustrate how this happens and can happen. Here's some storyboards from Rise, Son of Rome that was done like over 10 years ago. I was still working in pencil back in the day. So you can see a lot of scenes here, and they're very different because we're doing a montage in this storyboard. So we have two scenes that we montage together. And the one scene is a person, the main character from Rise, forging an armor. He's building his own disguise armor to go later on through the game. And the other thing is there's a big party in Rome and everybody's having sex and it's amazing and it's a bad guy. So we have on the one hand basically this orgy happening. On the other hand, we have a person forging this armor, and we have to cut this together, put music over it, and make it dramatic, and then the story can go on. The two scenes basically can combine, and that is very hard if you try to do this with the words, because we are in a visual medium here, but also the words are just taking you too long to read, and arranging sentences describing what is happening is really hard. So what we did here is like we took a section where we see, oh, there's a mask here and it's put into glowing coals, or it's taken out of it and somebody's picking it up, and then there's a hammer going down on that thing. So it's another shot. And on the right-hand side here, we have like a little C over it, right? And you see a woman like throwing up her hair and her arms, and the person laughing in the background. She's being pulled back with a chain. So those are all different shots. And now we're going to recombine them. And what happens there is that we sequence them in a different way. And that is so easy to do in storyboarding when you actually have a picture that represents the action that is taking place. It can only be one picture. It's enough if it's a very simple picture. It's definitely nicer to pitch it if it's a better picture. But that is beyond the point here. You can see now there's a lot of frames. There's a lot of things going on. But now that we have sequenced it differently, we can create a rhythm. And this rhythm will translate into the images. So if you look for Rise, Son of Rome and find the right moment, you can see how it turned out in the end. But this was a big help to the cinematic director with whom I basically created this scene, this montage here. Another thing is illustration. There's an illustration aspect to storyboarding as well, at least in my part it was, because as you know, I've done comic books, I've done illustration, so I can do both. I also can do concept art, but those are all different disciplines. Sometimes visual storytelling and illustration, so it's storyboarding basically is the basis for illustration, can be put together, and you can make this overview. This is an overview image for Rise, Son of Rome, where we have the mission 1, and we describe visually what is happening here. So we have a main hero, and he needs to save the emperor. Then he has to fight through some people to get to the emperor. The emperor takes him another direction, and they're defending, and they're ending up in a secret room. So I just combined concept art that we had and did sketches. We did an overpaint together with other artists and made this into a nicer sequence of images that we could just pin on the wall. And whenever somebody goes like, oh, mission 1, which one, what happened in mission 1 again? Or somebody needs an introduction to that, we could just show them this on the wall for all the 6 or so missions that we had. And people would get an immediate grasp of what's going on in the story. And that is storyboarding. It's visual storytelling. It's also great for gameplay. So what I have here right now is an excerpt from a talk given at the Game Developers Conference by my colleague Blake Reboucher. He's a principal quest designer at Guerrilla Games, and he describes in this GDC talk that you can also find on YouTube how he integrated a storyboard basically into his gameplay in order to connect 2 parts of gameplay.
The response to this, can we afford to add a new cinematic between the 2 boss phases?
I'll just turn down the music here. So this is about an environment, a place called the Recluse Spider. And it's a round room, and there's a big robot thing hanging at the top, which is basically a computer, giant computer, and you're supposed to like shoot it down. And you're running around there trying to evade Eric, which is an enemy who's shooting at you, and you at the same time in the game trying to shoot down this giant thing. So there are little connecting points on the wires, on the legs, basically, of this giant spider-like object, and you need to shoot all those down. But then you still have, it shouldn't fall down yet, right? Because there's another connecting point at the top of it. So we came up with a cinematic for connecting those 2 phases of battle. First, you have killed all the extra things, and when you hit the last connecting point, that's when the cinematic triggers, and then we see there's a new objective for the player. And this is how we did this. In production, it was just done with a storyboard. Later on in the game, it's a full cinematic. So we shoot down the last one, boom, it explodes. And all the legs are now cut off, but the thing is still hanging on 1 thread. She's looking around. Where's my enemy? Oh no, she is too late. He gets at her, grabs her, throws her around because he's super powerful, has great shields and all that stuff. And she falls on the ground and she looks up and she sees, wait a second, this thing is like hanging on 1 bare thread. So I have a new objective now. I know what to do. I have to shoot down this one little thing, and then I can vanquish my enemy. And that is how the game continues. And that ends the video. I hope that was interesting for everybody to see. Can you still hear me? Still good. Okay, excellent. Let's continue. Okay, that was that. Here are some other advantages, or sorry, other examples. Where's my English today? Hello. Another bunch of examples from productions I worked on. This is actually, these 2 are not game, but the same thing is true for game storyboards indeed. On the left hand, we see an excerpt from a trailer for the soap opera TV show Emmerdale from Great Britain. There was a trailer that 1 character would die, and John Yeo, who is an excellent director, he also worked on Love, Death, Robots recently. He worked with me there, or I got to work with him on this VFX heavy trailer, and I was able to help design the visual effects for this ghostly apparition that dances with the other characters that are real life characters. On the right, you can see another example for lighting, where I basically established a light source and how the characters are shown. And this was used for the, if I'm not mistaken, for the Copenhagen advertisement for Valorant, for a computer game, an esports game. And there's a company called Good Boy Creative from Los Angeles, and they make trailers for these events. And they're a super professional company with a super fast turnaround, and they sometimes like to use storyboards in order to help them get an idea for how to show the players in an environment. And those are like the real players who play the game, basically like the equivalent to soccer stars, to football stars in non-esports sports, they're called. So yeah, this is a lot of fun for me if I can go a little bit deeper than just doing an outline sketch drawing, but actually employ some texture, give it some atmosphere, some lighting. It's something I enjoy a lot, and that has a lot of uses. Another use of my storyboards, which you can see on the screen there, is using them on site. That means at mocap shoot. If you do motion capture, like for Lord of the Rings, where the people have all the dots on their bodies, on the suits, and they are being recorded, and their movement is translated one-on-one in real time on animated figures, or figures that can be animated through this technique. That's what's happening there. They have a head-mounted camera in front of them that's recording their face. So we have performance capture, that's PCAP. And when you sit down in a mocap facility with the actors and you go over the script and what is happening and why it's happening and how it's probably going to be shown at the end, probably, we say. There's always changes that happen on the ground in the volume, they say. That means on the mocap stage. The best or a great way of doing this is just showing storyboards. And here you see the cinematic director for Horizon Forbidden West and the producer together with the actor Ashley Birch, who plays Aloy, and with another actor, and they're looking at my storyboards. So that was a really cool moment for me to see, like, oh my God, yes, look at that. They actually use my boards, crummy, fast little sketches, and now they're blown up on a giant monitor, and they're looking at that, and they're just talking about story and trying to get on the same page, because money is of the essence in production. Everything has to go fast. It just has to be good enough, and later on it's going to be polished in animation. So my storyboards just need to get the story across. They don't have to be works of art and super beautiful.
We have a question.
Oh, please, yes.
What information do you have by the time you are given a sequence, such as the one you just showed? Do you have a script, audio, set, and props?
Often I only have the script, and depending on how far I'm involved in the production, and on Horizon I was very involved, and on Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, on the game I was very involved too. You ideally have contact with the quest designer and the level designer or level artist that can actually show you the location where something is happening, because there are a couple of things that are really important to know when you shoot a scene or when you storyboard a scene, right? It's important to know, are there flowers around them, or is it houses, or is it trees, or are they standing somewhere else where some other effect is happening? So it's do they have a line of sight to the next objective? Like, there are a lot of factors in there. So the more information you can gather, the better. Same goes for character design, right? If you don't know what a character looks like, it's kind of weird to draw them just a naked person standing there. And it might be really important to know what the character looks like. So if it has a giant head or like horns, like giant horns, if you do an over-the-shoulder shot, and if you place the camera too close to him, the horns will be in the way of the shot later on. So it's really good to know what you're dealing with in all those aspects. And that's what I meant when I said be acquainted with all arts. It means talk with all people, respect all the different trade skills that we have in game production, because they will become important to you. Because storyboarding is basically where everything comes together for the first time, and it's the first time where everything can fall apart as well. And that's really a good thing, because if stuff falls apart at my stage, we're saving a lot of money. If we shoot mocap and do voiceover and effects, and then we find out all these shots don't work together or don't work in the gameplay camera, we have a huge problem. There's one old adage from storyboarders. It's that if you think storyboarding is too expensive for you, or if you think hiring a professional is too expensive for you, try hiring a beginner, or try doing it without storyboarding. Then it's going to get expensive, because mistakes happen. About the first contact, that's actually the point I'm making right here with the script. Storyboarding is a visual form of script analysis. So we're the first contact with the real world, basically, of the script, and often we give feedback to the narrative department and to the writers, like, okay, it's nice that you wrote this here. Your dialogue is great, but the way this shot is set up doesn't work for certain reasons, and there might be a couple of those. It might be, oh, we actually cannot see that thing. Oh, it might be we have an animation problem. We cannot animate what you describe in the text. or a character holds an object in his hand, and then the cinematic ends, but the character still holds the object theoretically. The character has never released the object from their hand. And if you're in a gameplay, the character normally is empty-handed at the end, because you never know what the player at home is actually going to do next with the character. So you want to get rid of the weapons that are in the shot, for example, that if they're holding a weapon. Just a couple examples. A lot of things can go wrong. We all do our best, and the better we can communicate. And if we're realizing we're on the same team, then this is a great way of checking the script too. But that's indeed not. I'm not there. I'm not a script expert. I'm not a writer. I just want to make it happen. Only cry out, "Oh, wait, I have a question there," or "We cannot do this," and raise some red flags when it's really necessary. Otherwise, I'm just happy to just go on with the script. So in the essence, a shot like this is not a real storyboard. This could be a keyframe. This is something I drew in one of my workshops for Adobe Live, because I'm working with Photoshop a lot. This shot, though, embodies a little bit how much information can be stored in one picture. So it has information about lighting and light sources. It has like particle effects in there. We can see there's fires burning, so we need to have this particle effect working if we want that. We can see field of view and the camera settings. Like we can see a blur effect maybe on the characters because they're really close to the camera. We see how the stage is built, that the king is a little bit higher up on his throne. There are like 3 steps leading towards his throne. And this can be great for concept artists who take these ideas and then actually bring this in. And later on, we will see this also has an impact on, this storyboarding has basically an impact describing for the stage builders and the mocap stage what is going on. So a lot of information in just one picture. Storyboarding. Storyboarding, in the essence, connects all these different departments. That's my big message for today. If you're a narrative, if you're a director, if you're an animator, if you're a lighting artist, if you do concept art, if you work on a mocap stage, if you're an actor, you will get information from storyboarding. And storyboarding can bring all these disparate disciplines together and bring everybody on the same page. And we do this with the flick of the wrist and the blink of an eye, and sometimes with just one picture. So hug a storyboard artist today. If you think this is cool and we can actually contribute to making your game. But let's talk about story, except if there's another question.
No question, but we're about 30 minutes in.
Fantastic. Okay, let's talk about story. Let's go in there. Story. Here's a quote for you. And therefore, when one's thinking of a film globally, the talk is reduced to a minimum. And if possible, tell the story visually and let the talk be part of the atmosphere. I mentioned that before. It's very unlikely that I will critique or refer to dialogue in any way, shape, or form when I'm storyboarding a script. If I get it and a narrative, a writer gives me the script, the text of the script, the dialogue is the law for me. I'm trying to incorporate this into the storytelling, into the visual storytelling. But this is a quote by Alfred Hitchcock. He knew about storytelling. He knew, for example, his films would be seen by different audiences globally. And that's why the pictures were telling the story more than the dialogue, because there could be a translation indeed into Japanese, into German of his films, but will they carry the same information? Will they have the same effect on people? You don't know. And so this was really important for him, and it's still true to this day. Storyboarding, you can say, is ideas visualized. The ideas are on the paper, in the mind of the writer and the team, and I'm the first person to put it into pictures. But am I really? There's another job out there too, and it's called concept art. And storyboards on the left here are very different from concept art. While storyboards go into the breadth and the horizontal axis, concept art goes deep into one character. But there's a difference between the two. It's not the same thing. When I actually started out drawing, I was always like drawing concept art, and then I would draw like little, like, oh, what he's standing on. Let's draw the ground a little bit. Oh, there might be a crate in the background, and then I was adding a building, and all of a sudden I was drawing an entire scene. And that was the moment when I realized in my career that maybe I'm not a concept artist. Maybe I'm not about drawing 15 different belt buckle variations from the 18th or 19th century for soldiers, whatever. Maybe I'm more about telling the story. And this is an excerpt from Will Eisner's book, Comics and Sequential Art. Years old, I bought it back in the day when I was drawing comics, and it talks about the difference between an illustration and a visual. An illustration is just a picture that is attached to a script, and it enhances and visualizes, it enhances that script. But the visual works without the script, without the text next to it. And that is really important for what I do. Because especially when I do storyboards, I don't have sound effects normally that I throw in. I don't have a voiceover or something like that. We should see from just how the characters act on stage, it's somebody's in distress, somebody's entertained. There's a problem, there's a conflict. And that's where I'm coming from a story department, from a story perspective. Storyboarding is visualizing. So we are visualizers. We're not illustrators. Storyboarding is not illustrating the script, because if you have a simple dialogue that says, I love you, for example, as we see down there in this example from Will Eisner, it can be delivered in multiple different ways. And depending on how I draw the character differently, or in this case, Will Eisner did, you can see there's a different intonation inclined by it. And this really informs everyone in the production pipeline, most people, about what's going on really. We'll see this in a little animation I'm going to show you in a minute. This is the difference between illustration and concept art, like really put down. On the left, we have illustration. On the right, we have concept art. Concept art has a lot of call-outs, a lot of extra information in words next to it. It has side views, diagrams, it has close-ups of interesting elements, and the illustration has real lighting in it, like lighting where elements disappear, right? There are lost edges in this painting that I did here, right? So you cannot really see how the boots are attached, like how are they closed, how many straps are there, what is happening under his arm, is there another pouch, is there another weapon? We don't know. So we can't actually model this character based on the illustration on the right. A 3D artist can go and model the character based on the illustration, on the right, but on the left, this black and white, the toned one, there we cannot do this. I think that makes sense, right? Cool. Time is passing. If we do 3 instances of concept art, we can see a character in 3 stages of the game as they are progressing through the game. You can see a knight in shining armor, and then the helmet is gone, and we can see like, oh, more of his armor is gone. He's really torn up, so he lost parts of his armor during a battle, for sure. We can see this, right? And this is something concept artists would do too. But now we don't know how he actually lost the helmet, right? It probably happened in the fight, but did it? If we do storyboards, these changes get illustrated. These changes get visualized all of a sudden. We see the character came up a staircase, entered a building, and then he took off his helmet on his own, and then he entered a fight. And during the fight, he lost parts of his armor, for example. This is just an example of this. But it just illustrates that storyboarding is change visualized. And it's change over time. And that's what we're interested in. Whenever a character grows, they change over time. If the character doesn't change, they are called a flat character, not a round character. And flat characters are normally not the protagonists of the story. They can be. I think, for example, like Blade, the vampire hunter, is a flat character. He doesn't really change. But the interesting part is like the other people's lives are changed by that character in the stories and on the screen in the movies, at least. So it's change visualized. So how does change happen? And the narrative friend in the forum definitely knows, yeah, change happens through conflict. So there always has to be conflict. There has to be. If a scene or a story doesn't have conflict, there's no story, and you cut the scene, you eliminate it, right? The same is true for game development. If you find out there's a scene in there that is just fluff, it's just like, oh yeah, that's nice to have. Wouldn't it be great to show a crowd scene, and normally we cannot do crowd animation in the game because it's too complex, but we could storyboard it. We could shoot an animation and a cinematic with a crowd and just put this in there, so we see, oh my God, it's nice to have this crowd in there. Yeah, no, that's not good. That's not a good way of showing this. It doesn't do anything for the gameplay. It doesn't do anything really for the world building. It doesn't do anything for the plot, and that is important. And then we have to just cut that that cinematic. And basically the best thing we can find out during the storyboarding process is that a cinematic can be cut because it doesn't fulfill the real purpose of telling the story, of making characters grow through conflict. And there are three main types of conflict. And one is with another character, like an antagonist. You're fighting somebody and trying to survive fighting this character. This is one type of conflict. The other one is the conflict with the environment. There's a volcano erupting. You're trying to avoid the ashes from the volcano. That's a conflict with the environment. Or there's an internal conflict where the character is alone. There's no drama from the environment, but it's like, should I eat this donut? Oh, I know I shouldn't be. I've fulfilled my quota of calories for today, but the donut looks so interesting. Should I do this? How will my friends and family feel about me if I eat the donut because it's actually my dad's donut? So you see, there's a conflict immediately, and you immediately feel and empathize with the character. So it needs to be one of those three, or even all three of them together. Here's a scene from Rise, Son of Rome. I'm just going to run you really quickly through this scene and give you some heads-up information what happened before. So the main character's family has been brutally murdered, and he's on a revenge spree, going to England, actually, from Rome, and trying to find the barbarians that killed his family. And so he's in a bad mood. But he's arriving with other forces on the island. So they're sailing over, arriving in Dover. And in shots 2 and 3 down here, we can see our main character, and he's wrapped in thought, and he's grabbing the handle of his sword. We see there's agitation. It's an internal conflict. But all of a sudden, from the harbor where they thought it would be safe, fireballs are coming over, and they're being attacked, and the entire fleet basically gets destroyed because the base in Dover was taken over by the barbarians, and they're now fighting these Romans arriving there. So there's a conflict. With other characters, you could say, but he's falling to the water now. That is not really a conflict. That is something that just happens, right? Fighting or getting shot at, that's a conflict with another character, an external one, but with an antagonist. But falling down is something he does not control. And characters grow when they make decisions. That is the heroic part of the heroic journey. The character makes decision despite the opposition. And that's how we get this character to grow and to be interesting. So he falls into the water, comes up from the water, and then he fights the environment. He has a conflict with the environment. So it's all three conflicts baked into one cinematic. Were there changes when it came to actually making this happen and putting this out there? Yes. Go online, check out the cinematics for Rise, Son of Rome. It was an Xbox One launch title in 2013. I was very proud to work on it. It was a lot of fun, great project. And the cinematics still hold up to this day, even 10 years later, still good looking stuff. And back then it was really a benchmark visualization of story and of cinematics. Really can only show a thumbs up to my former colleagues at Crytek. So I have another quote for you, and it's from this book. It's from Ed Hooks. He wrote Acting for Animators. And the quote says on page 18 that your character should play an action in pursuit of an objective while overcoming an obstacle. So basically, we should, if we go back here for a second, in every one of those shots, we should be able to ask our character, what are you doing? What is he doing? In the first part of this, he's just thinking. He's feeling stuff. And we see this by inaction of him not standing around shouting or doing something aggressive. It's internal conflict, internal anger, and he's grabbing the sword handle because of that. So that is what he's doing. Here in 6 and 7, he's just falling off, right? He's not doing anything. He's not even reacting to anything. You can say acting is reacting, but he's not really reacting something. He's just thrown overboard and that's it. But now in the end, he's reacting to being thrown in there. He gets out of the water, or he tries to get out of the water, tries to swim and survive. So we should be able to ask the character, what are you doing at every time? Because we should have the action in pursuit of an objective while overcoming an obstacle. Can it look like this as a schemata, as a scheme, as a drawing? Very simple. We have a ninja there. He wants to get the golden idol. There's fire, so he has to play an action, which is jumping, to reach the objective and overcoming the obstacle. So it's very simple. But another thing that Ed Hook says in his books is that every scene is a negotiation, because there are some scenes where you don't have action. And if you storyboard for AAA computer games, the action happens in the gameplay. The action does not really happen in the cinematics for the most parts. So there might just be two characters in an empty room and they talk. And they have a negotiation. They want to one-up each other, and they want to find out some information the other have, or they want to keep the other person from finding out that information. And that's where the conflict comes from all of a sudden. And that's where stuff gets interesting. And now we as a cinematics team have to find a way to make this fascinating to look and really interesting. And with this idea of the scene being in negotiation and no huge action happening, we check out a cinematic from Horizon Forbidden West. And I'm hitting play. Let's see if it plays. Yes, it does. So there was gameplay before, and there's going to be gameplay later. And Aloy, just going to turn this down. Aloy just arrived on a huge high tower, just climbed up there, and she's hacking a node. She's fighting. She has overcome the obstacle of the environment, like getting up there, and she's now triggering this electric computer node that then reacts and shows her a hologram. You can see it in my storyboards how it appears there in the sky. There's an idea I came up with during storyboarding, and it was used for the VFX in this scene. So she finds a location and she finds an antagonist. And as you can see in this juxtaposition that was put out by Gorilla, you see the motion capture suits and the actors on stage in the volume playing the scene in real time. You can see one of the actors, he's standing on a platform, right? So storyboarding this gave us the information, and drawing a little map, isometric drawing maybe, gave people the information that they had to build a stage. So he was a little bit higher up. So her line of sight actually corresponds with what is needed when she sees the hologram. Now you see the face appearing there on the two characters. That's a kabuki system where the head-mounted camera that I mentioned before is recording the face, and just put that in there as a makeshift version of really integrating facial animation performance capture into the engine and into the makeshift cinematic, into the work in progress piece as soon as possible. Because we read emotions by gestures and by faces. And here you can actually see at the very end how the storyboarding really was carried out and gave an inspiration to the actor too. Like she's putting her hands in her hips, just the way I illustrated it. And she makes a decision here at the end to follow this guy into the Forbidden West and to this location. So we had all three conflicts again in this cinematic. I hope you liked this one. I liked it a lot. Yeah, so all three are in there. There's a conflict with another character, basically. There's conflict with the environment. There's definitely a lot of internal conflict there. She just couldn't really be in physical conflict with the other character because he wasn't there. It was just a hologram. She would have liked to strangle that guy, but she couldn't. And in the end, she made a decision to grow as a character, and we follow her on that journey in that game. It's an amazing game. Everybody should play it. Let's talk about cinematics for a second. We are talking about cinematics, but this was more about the story background of cinematics. But maybe Lisa also has a question.
Not so far.
Very good. How are we doing for time? Are we 45 minutes in?
Yeah, about 45 minutes. You have like 10 minutes, so we can go to the Q&A session, the end.
Okay,
I think there would be some more questions.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm seeing it's already like 4:30, so I should get cracking. So yeah, cinematics are like the meat in a sandwich. They are sandwiched between two pieces of gameplay, and what makes it very different from a normal animated movie where you just have the normal pipeline of shot after shot and scene after scene, and it's all fully animated. It's all done in advance. It's not done in real time. But here it's like, we are the sandwich between two gameplay parts. And so the cinematic consists of like three parts. Like one is the trigger, one is the main bulk of the cinematic, and the other one is the release back to gameplay. And all this needs to be controlled. And I, as a storyboard artist, need to have information how that happens and what the idea is that we want to convey. So there are two different types of triggers. I'm just going to go through it really, really fast. We can go back to it later at some other point, but there's the interact and the zone trigger. So normal triggers are interacts. You run around with your character in blue here, or in teal, and you have a green character, and the character stands around at a wall and turns around and talks to you. That's great. You just go there, click, and then whoop, you click interact. So you do something, and then there's your reaction. You see the character turning around to you and go like, hey, hello, I have a new mission for you. That's fantastic. It gets a bit more problematic or less problematic when you come from the side. It doesn't matter because there's not a lot of variation you can have because you're directly interacting with the trigger, with the character. The green zone is basically the trigger zone. And you see, if you're further away and make this into a zone trigger that is a bigger zone, it gets more complicated because there's more distance to the character that you're actually supposed to interact with. And you can come from a completely different angle. I could come from the right and have not even seen the character because I don't see him there on the side of the screen. And all of a sudden there's a character in the screen saying like, hey, hello, I have a new mission for you. That would shock us and take us out of the experience. So it needs to be inserted into the gameplay in a way that is non-destructive, that is in a way expected. Oh, I'm interacting with a character, then a cutscene happens. That's a very normal process that the player understands readily. It gets even more complicated when the zone trigger is bigger. For example, if you have a fight, you're fighting 6-7 characters, and at the end, it says maybe in the script, the fight ends, and the character standing nearby turns around to you, goes like, you are an excellent fighter. I have a mission for you. That would be a shocking thing. I'm just hitting an enemy down here, and I have a line of sight that goes in a completely different direction, and then I just reduce the hit points of the last enemy to 0, and then whoop, we have a character there all of a sudden going, turning around and going like, hey, hello. This works in script. It does not work in gameplay or put into gameplay. So the question is what we can do if that happens. So if you have a fighting arena, but your next objective or as a cinematic is going to happen over here, there are two characters standing on those stairs up there, but you're fighting in the green arena and you don't know which of the two enemies you have vanquished at the last. You don't know what direction you're looking at, right? So we can use a trick here and just like cut to something that is not fully connected to you hitting a person, and that's maybe not even necessarily fully connected to the cinematic happening afterwards. And I've done this here. So we see these two characters. Actually, where I was able to bring them into the equation here. So we just shoot the stairs, and you have just hit one of the characters and reduce his hit points to 0, and he falls down. And then we have a character falling down, and our main character walks into the scene, walks up to them, and talks with these two guys. That's already happening in the cinematic. But now we have a natural progression that gives our main character some time to walk from wherever they have been before to the real location where we want them to be, and to rest the eye for a moment for the player at home who's just playing, and then all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, what's happening? Oh, somebody's falling down. Oh yeah, you're right, because I just hit him. And then the character comes in and they're already mentally in a different stage. So the smoother we can make this trigger happen, this transition happen, the better it is. The other big one is the release. When we're releasing from the cinematic to the gameplay again, two things need to be taken into account. One is that we need to see the next objective. So normally it's like, hey, go to this house on the hill there. There's somebody hold hostage there. Please free that person. You get a new mission. I'm just making this up off the top of my head, indeed. So it could be also something funny, like please go to the garden and go to this tree and pick this flower, for example. Something very peaceful and serene. I'm just normally doing stories that have a little bit more conflict and are a bit more gritty. So the next objective needs to be clearly pointed out, and the exits needs to be covered. That means there might be other characters, and those characters are no longer needed or wanted after the cutscene happens. So if I have a scene where we as a green character have just come up the stairs and we talk to this character and interact with the character, no matter where the cinematic was now, we need to be able to point to the next objective and get rid of the other character. Because what we cannot happen is that we end the cinematic and then this character stands around and does nothing. We talk to this guard and he says, like, well, you have to go to the little castle, or you have to go to the little mill on the other side of the town. You can see it there. And he points the direction, we can see it. That's great. Then it means we have the next objective bookmark checked. He is still there. So when the cinematic ends, this character will be there. So that means this character needs to have an idle simulation, an idle pose, or whatever he's doing in that moment. Because in gameplay, you can still interact with him. You can still try to talk with him again because he is still there. And you can see him do stuff because he's still there. Sometimes in the script, it says character exits. That means the character really needs to exit, needs to go through a door and the door closes. Can go around a corner and it's gone. It despawns. What is really bad, or what would be really bad, if the cinematic ends and we're still looking at the character and the character despawns in front of our eyes. That will take us out of the game experience, out of the story experience, and we don't want that. So we need to control the release, because the release is still the area that the cinematics deal with. So those are the two big ones. And before I come to the end, the third one is the cinematic itself. And that also has different complexities in there. Trigger release we talked about, but in cinematics, especially in animation, there's something we could call animation complexity that is not really there in movies. For example, in movies, facial animation costs nothing. You just record, you just film the actor or the extra on set reacting to something, and then you have it. Facial animation is the most expensive thing in games. Particles, clouds, explosions, crowd scenes, cheap. From far away, no problem. But if you have facial animation in the crowd scene, that's a huge problem. So there is some animation complexity. Same thing goes for touching, for example. Like if a character touches the other character, that is an interaction, how the displacement of the cloth is working. Does your engine? Can your engine do this? How much does it cost? Like, will it look wrong? Oh my God, is the character interacting with the main character, with the protagonist? So is it you? But you have changed your armor before the cinematic happens, and that means the armor is no longer the standard armor of your player character. If you have Horizon Forbidden West, Aloy has a lot of different outfits, and maybe she has the Osram outfit or the Tanakh outfit all of a sudden, right? Which was protruding things, right? And then you have an interaction happen, and then clipping happens, and that's not something that we want. We don't want clipping to happen, which is when the hand goes through the character, because it's not real life. It's just a simulation of physics. Feature changes are really really important and difficult. For example, there's a scene and the person is almost, I don't know, like he's falling into snow, and then his hands are shaking because it's so cold, and then they're putting some snow and they're throwing it somewhere else. That's really complex budgetary animation in there, and I don't know if the engine of our game can even do this. And what if what happens if the feature changes? What if it turns out, we cannot do snow? Snow is too expensive. We can make it cold, we can make it rainy, but we cannot do snow for the life of it, right? So this entire cinematic changes, and it needs to be storyboarded again, because you cannot take snow, squash it together and throw it away. It's no longer possible. With rain, it's no longer, maybe it's the same if we do it with mud, but again, it's a physics simulation thing, and that has to be a feature of the game. Budget indeed is there too. I just talked about how much facial animation can we have in there. Maybe we have to do a scene later. Especially cinematics that are at the end of the game are not as complex, not as expensive, because what you might not know, especially if you're making the game yourself, you think like everybody's going to play my game, and if they love it, they're going to play it through to the end. And yeah, that is actually not true. 80% of all games are not finished. They never finish the game. They love the game. It's amazing, but they don't have time. And there's a new game that came up and they want to try that out, and they forgot about the old game. It was great, but they never saw the ending. They played through most of it and they liked it, but they're going to buy the next part. But the ending, yeah, not so important because they had other things to do. That is a reality we have to deal with. And the same thing goes for cinematics. Most of the budget is pumped into the first half, or the first third, I would say, of the entire project, right? And later on, it can peter out, and we just need a resolution, and we just need something that is cheap. Because if you do a cutscene, an expensive 100,000 euros animation at the end of the game, but most people have never seen it, then there will be some producers in the pipeline on the game that will say, like, why are we doing this? Why is this so expensive? We don't even need this. So let's rather put all this money into the front and really wow people with amazing cinematics, and then let them play the game, because that's also what we want to do. We want to have them play the game. So cinematics should be short, intense, and awesome. Yeah, that is most of what I have, and we can go into the Q&A now if you like, if we still have time.
Yeah, we have time. The first question is not in the Q&A mode. One participant asked if it's okay to post a picture with a character action objective on Twitter, because it sums story in general up very well. Is she is tagging you?
Yeah, tag me on the Twitter thing. I'll actually look at it. Yeah, but I mean, doing it now would be a bit complex.
No, not now, but I
please
think
tag me on Twitter. I also
Okay.
invite you to follow me on Twitter. I'm at Klauski. I'm easy to find everywhere on the internet. I'm a public person, basically. If you're able to write my name, you will find me.
Perfect. So we have the other questions direct on screen.
Mhm.
In TV animation, I usually have 6 weeks to board about 7 to 10 pages for a script. What is the schedule like for a game storyboarding?
Well, that varies. That varies how much changes we have, right? Like the changes I explained. 6 weeks to board 7 to 10 pages of a script. It depends on what you mean with boarding that. Sometimes people have said or put up that you do one page a day in storyboarding, which is really just storyboarding. It's not animation. It's not doing an animatic that moves, with every single thing. Like it could just be like 10 frames, or it could be 20 frames or 25 frames, depending on your speed and what the scene actually needs. So you do a page a day. So 6 weeks for 7 to 10 pages sounds great. But I don't know what that entails really. And there might be a review process involved too. And that is something that that's a bit tricky, because what you described there probably entails like revisions. Like you do a rough version first, and then you do a revised version, and then we change the script a little bit, and we add we plus the script, as we say in storyboarding. So we take the script and make it more exciting, more funny, maybe more complex, depending on if that is a good thing. And so then it can take much longer. Yeah. So it can happen that for a 7 to 10 page script, yes, also use a month of work because I'm doing a really high-end drawings, and really use the time to polish the animation part of the storyboarding process. So there's a difference between storyboarding, which is still pictures, and there's an animatic where we take multiple pictures and put them together, so to simulate rough movement. And also, by the way, TV animation or feature animation has often higher how do I put this? They want us to draw on character. So in other animation for film, you can be a little bit off character, and it doesn't matter if you really nail down the features of the character, as long as we see, oh yeah, that's the main character, and that is the NPC, and this is a tree in the background, and we can tell them apart. That's great. But in feature animation, really for cartoons, it's important that the characters look like the characters.
Okay, so the next question. I don't see a lot of boarding jobs posted on game websites. Is it because they are usually freelance? And if so, what would make someone stand out?
Yeah, that's interesting. On game websites, you mean company of those games, right? So the thing is that a company might have, for example, like on Horizon Forbidden West, we had like 300 employees working on the game for several years, and at least on site we only had one storyboard artist. That was me. And then we had other amazing storyboard artists who helped out at the end to make everything quicker and who brought their expertise and experience and quality. So Ernest and Fred, shout out here. But yeah, so the question was, why are there? Yeah, it's exactly what you say. Like, they're freelance. These positions often, like I was, and we just come on for everything between 6 weeks to 2 years. And then we work on the project, and then there's a long time where the company pre-produces basically and plans the next game, and that will take a year or so too. So they don't want to pay for us, and that's super fine. We move to the next project. And if so, what would make someone stand out? Well, you always have to cater your portfolio to the company. So I don't know what type of boards you do, but if it's for a Nintendo Switch game with cute animals, then your storyboard should show cute animals and all that stuff, right? I do gritty guys with guns, basically always. So if you check my Instagram, there's a possibility. But I will put something in the chat here, or can we share my screen again? Or do I have to click a button there? Because this might be really interesting for my friend there.
Yeah, there's your screen.
Can you see the Excel file there?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So this is the animation and effects and game industry job posting list. This is a list that lives on the internet, and just look for this term: animation, VFX, game industry job postings. And there's one man, and that man makes this list happen, and it's always up to date. And as you can see, this list is dramatically long, and it has all the animation things in there. So if you do a Google search on this one, if you search for the term storyboard, for example, you will find storyboard positions at game companies, and it's always up to date. You see, like, these are from October 17th, 2022. It has a link to the source. It has a link to the career page that you can click on, and then you can apply for the job and get the job. And it has enormous, it looks for producers, 3D artists, 2D artists, narrative designers, quest designers, and also us little storyboard artists. So
I think we're done with questions so far, so we can switch to the demo. So we have a little bit time for the demo.
Oh yeah, fantastic. Okay, if there are no more, I'm gonna screen share again, and we should see my Photoshop now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, how much time do we have? We have like 15 minutes left.
Like 15 minutes. Let's make it 10, so we can say goodbye.
Yes. Okay, we'll make it a short one. So maybe we just draw one frame and just leave it at that, and then see what we can make from this. Does anybody have a story? Did somebody post something like a story idea, like one moment from one shot that we could illustrate here, that we could visualize here? Because
I have nothing in the chat, but somebody's typing.
I mean, I can just make something up off the top of my head. That's
Yeah.
not a problem. But if somebody's typing something, then I'm
I like the
curious.
idea about the inner conflict with the donut.
Inner conflict. Okay, inner conflict with the donut. Okay, cool. Let's do that. Let's do that. We're just going to do one shot. Maybe we'll compare the shots. So when we talk about a person that is thinking about a donut, let me see if this works here. There's an enormous lag on my computer, but hopefully it's gonna work after all. So I'm gonna move this here. So a shot with a donut. So what we not necessarily want to do is, I mean, we could do like a David Fincher type shot where somebody like comes into a door, like we have a door opening here, and we have a character that just like comes in here, walks in from the door, has just opened the door, and we see a table. The table is a little bit too high. We have to lower the table here. And we put a table down here, and we have a donut that's on here, but it doesn't really read this way, right? It's not very exciting. There might be a window. So this is far too simple for us to do. And we don't have the intention yet of the donut. We only have a character. We show the nose here, just coming in and walking like this. I'll just like do this. Just add a little bit of difference here, and already we have a character walking, right? If we delete this here, you can see there's a door that has opened. And if we give this a little bit more perspective, oopsie, I can just draw in the door frame, and then the entire picture gets a little bit more interesting. Okay, that's already good. We have a character, like we can draw a little arrow in here as we do in storyboarding. So this would already be good enough for an opening shot. I mean, it doesn't really look convincing that this is a real environment. It looks very much like a stage play. So it's not that interesting, because stage plays are static. It's about characters talking, and there's not much differentiation. There's not much difference going on there. So I want to now show that this donut is really awesome and is seen by the main character. So what I do is called an OTS, and over the shoulder. So I can do this. I draw the shoulder of the character. I draw an ear from behind. Just do this, like some nose here. Character comes in, and we see the shoulder here. And then I'm going to do the table here. And that's the table. That's a shadow on the ground of the table. We have the window in the background here. We do it super fast because we're just gonna put down some shots now. And this is the way I can actually work with the director too, because he would say like, no, I don't think like we should have an opening shot with just the empty place and the character going. We should like start with the table and somebody steps into frame, like this character like could step into frame, for example. Yeah. And then we have the donut lying on the table here, and is nicely presented, and maybe even surrounded by, there's maybe a bottle and a glass standing here. So I'm just going to put this in here. The bottle and the glass is in there as well. So we establish all that, and we have the window in the background. So this is a giant person. We have to take this down a couple notches, and yeah, that works. These two shots actually work together because we're still on the same side as the character in terms of blocking this character out. So what normally happens when you plan anything is you look at the environment and you say like, oh, you have a door, and the door opens in this direction. This is important because if the door would open from here and we have the camera looking into this direction, then we would not be able to see the character when the door opens, right? So the door opens in this direction, so I know this. And then we have the table here, and we have the donut here, and we have the bottle and the glass here. And then we have the main character coming in. So this is great for me and the director, playing fast and loose with talking about the script and placing the camera. So the first camera position, for example, is here, just shooting the entirety of it. Very, very wide angle establishing shot of this one here. And the next shot is the character. I'm going to move the character now. Character comes in, character moves over here, and then we do an OTS. We do an over the shoulder, and we shoot this part. Now, right, we shoot over his shoulder. We see a little bit of the head, and we see the donut and the bottle and all this stuff. And maybe even we're a bit here so we can see the window because there's the window maybe. So in terms of camera placement, these top downs are super important. And if there's one rule that I always implore people to follow is draw an effing map. Draw a map. Always draw a map. Even if you cannot draw a map. Don't have fear. Don't be afraid. A map will help everybody get on the same page, and this could become interesting. I'm going to pull this down here so we can do some more frames. So we have not jumped the line because there's a line established between the main character and the oopsie, nothing is happening there. The main character and the donut, and we're not jumping over that. That's another rule of storyboarding. Don't jump the line. Yes, you can Google that, or you can follow me online and find out more about storyboarding and find out more about that. And then we do a really cool shot. The next one I would like switch back. It's takes a moment here. My Photoshop is frozen. I just want to zoom in. Oops. Cannot zoom in anymore for some reason. Doesn't work. Why is that not working? It's weird. See, I'm clicking and nothing is happening. That's we're doing it live. Yep. Cannot go. That is weird. Okay. I would like to draw more for you, but this is super weird. Okay, that has not yet happened. Photoshop is freezing up on me. This is confusing. Did I? The aspect ratio looks weird as well. Really don't understand this. There's nothing here. Did I misclick something? Normally, I would now ask my my host, like who knows Photoshop too, like, hey, what do I do? Can't even. It doesn't do anything. Okay, normally stuff should disappear. Yeah, I'm trying a different format here, which is also okay. So I'm going to do the reverse angle shot now. So I would go on the table actually, and go to the bottle that is there and the glass, and I would show the donut. And maybe because this is not dramatic enough, I would actually go in like really, really close. Have the glass here. Have the donut huge on the table. It's a donut with some sprinkles on it, and then have my character in the background. And thinking about the donut, and they're standing in the door frame, so I can frame them interestingly. The door is open, and I can make them, for example, stand out because the door outside is dark, so that makes them stand out more. And then I can use like a white here, white highlight to just highlight this character a little bit, and then I could highlight the donut because there's light coming from a lamp somewhere, and we have a more interesting shot that is, and this would be the wall, and this part, the bottle here that has a label on it, and the glass that is standing next, it's not so important, right? And I want it to read differently. I want this to be in the foreground, and then have a midground that is important, and then the background is again less important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blur the foreground. Filter effects, Weichzeichnungsfilter, and boom. So I'm going to blur this a whole lot. Boom. And now we have created a much more interesting shot. We're just looking over the shoulder, basically, of this bottle here to our main character. And then there might be an action that plays out afterwards. The person wants to grab the donut, for example. And we can go creative with it. We have like 5 more minutes. Oh, no, we're done, right?
Yeah, it's about time to come to an end.
What I would do, we come to an end. So what I would do, and that's the most fun part for me, is like we could draw a hand that is actually coming from the top here on the round table with the bottle here, and the hand is reaching in and grabbing the donut that is on the table. The scale doesn't work right now, but that could be a possibility, and just do a top down on this. But if I just have to draw and show one illustration for a person who wants to eat a donut in a room that they have just entered, then this is the shot I would choose. It would not be one of the first ones. I would take this one. And this illustrates that storyboarding is a creative process. It zigzags a lot, and you need to try out stuff to arrive at a final version that is interesting, and that is the most interesting and surprising and elegant and coolest shot possible for a scene. And yeah, I think that concludes this presentation, but it also reiterates something that I've said at the very beginning, where I said, like, yeah, you have to know a lot about all the different disciplines, and you're bringing everybody on the same to the same place by storyboarding and by pushing the narrative. And it's not only illustrating the script.
Thank you so much. It was a very exciting and informative lesson, I think.
Thank you.
I have a look, but we have no more questions. Just another thank you. It was a great webinar. Thank you so much, Klaus.
Thank you.
And
follow me on Instagram and LinkedIn and get in touch.
And great thanks to our participants and for the questions. And I hope to see you at our next webinar.